You'll never be able to prove it, Julian. It's your word against mine. And believe me, in this world, my word carries far more weight than yours." Famous composer Viktor Roth stared directly into my eyes as he said this. I couldn't stop my knees from trembling as I faced this man who claimed my opera was his own creation, not mine. He was right. I had no proof. But what he didn't know was that I had always documented my work with paranoid meticulousness. And at that moment, the original handwritten scores locked in a drawer at my apartment were irrefutable evidence that the music was entirely mine. My name is Julian Harwood, a 29-year-old opera composer. After graduating from the Royal College of Music in London, I moved to Vienna to further develop my skills. 5 years ago, I met my Italian partner Marco, who helped me feel at home in this new city. Marco worked as a fashion designer and had good connections in the art scene. While building a new life together in Vienna, I began working on a project I had been carrying within me for a long time, an opera that blended Eastern and Western music, set during the reign of Emperor Rudolph II in Prague. I named it The Alchemist's Tears, focusing on the tragic death of the emperor's court alchemist. For 2 years, I woke up at 5 every morning and wrote compositions until midnight. Alongside my lessons at the Vienna Music Academy, I devoted all my free time to this opera. I meticulously recorded every melody, every aria, and every recitative in my own handwriting on special paper. I dated the top right corner of each page and took care to preserve previous versions. This obsessive habit came from my father's advice. In the art world, always protect your original work by documenting it thoroughly. When I completed my opera, I excitedly played it for Marco. "This is extraordinary," he said, his eyes shining. "Julian, this is your turning point. But you need to meet Viktor." Viktor Roth was one of the most influential figures in Vienna's opera world. This German-born composer in his 50s had composed the 3 most successful operas of the last decade. During my conservatory training, I had memorized his works. "How will we meet him?" I asked in surprise. "We're invited to a party he's hosting soon," Marco said with a smile. "You can show him your work there." 2 weeks later, we attended the party at Viktor's lavish apartment in central Vienna. I felt small among the distinguished guests, almost all from the art world. My hands were trembling as I touched the USB drive in my pocket. The digital copy of my opera was there. Marco introduced me to Viktor. He was tall, slender, with penetrating eyes. Meeting him felt like a dream come true for me. "So you're from the conservatory?" "Interesting." "Which instrument?" Viktor asked, bringing his champagne glass to his lips. "Piano," I said. "But my true passion is composition. Actually, I've completed an opera. It would be wonderful to get your opinion." Viktor's eyebrows raised slightly. "An opera? That's quite a claim, young man." "I believe it's valuable," Marco interjected. "Julian's work is truly unique. He's blended Eastern and Western music." Viktor looked at me more carefully. "Well, I'd very much like to hear it. Perhaps you have a demo recording or a score?" "I have a digital copy with me," I said, taking the USB drive from my pocket. Viktor seemed hesitant, but then took the drive. "Very well. Let's see what the young British composer has created. I'll call you in a few days." That night, we returned home with mixed feelings. I was excited, but also anxious. Marco, however, was enthusiastic. "This is your big opportunity, Julian. If Viktor likes it, your opera will be staged immediately." A week passed. No news. 2 weeks passed. Still nothing. Marco tried to reassure me. "He's busy. Everyone wants something from him." At the end of the 3rd week, I received a call from Viktor. His voice was cold and distant. "Mr. Harwood, I've examined your opera. Unfortunately, I don't think it will succeed in its current form. The work is raw, disconnected. Perhaps you might try again in a few years." His words deeply shook me. I don't understand, I said in confusion. Could I get feedback on specific sections? I'm sorry, I don't have time to go into more detail. Good day. When I hung up, Marco was beside me. I told him about the conversation. I can't believe it, he said angrily. I listened to your work. It was outstanding. Maybe he didn't understand it because it's so different from his style. Or maybe it's just not good enough, I said hopelessly. That evening, I met with friends to distract myself from my disappointment. After a few glasses of wine, a young cellist named Thomas sat next to me. I heard you showed your composition to Viktor, he said in a low voice. Just so you know, he doesn't examine works, he steals them. A friend of mine experienced the same thing last year. Be careful. That night, returning home, Thomas's words kept spinning in my head. In a moment of paranoia, I opened my computer and began researching Viktor Roth's recent work. According to his official website, he was soon working on a new opera called The Emperor's Alchemist. Subject: a love story set in Prague during Emperor Rudolf II's reign. My heart raced. Could such a similar theme be a coincidence? Early the next morning, I decided to call Viktor's assistant, Clara. I remembered she was the young woman who greeted us at the beginning of the party. I used my connections in the music community to find her number. Clara? Hello, this is Julian Harwood. We met at Viktor's party. I was wondering if I could get some information about Viktor's new opera. Clara hesitated. Well, it's a rather secretive project, but I suppose I can share the information that's been released to the press. Mr. Roth is currently working on The Emperor's Alchemist, to be premiered at the opening of next season. Interesting. What exactly is the content? It takes place in the 16th century Prague. It's about a love story and intrigue involving an alchemist at Emperor Rudolph's court. Actually, Mr. Roth is taking a revolutionary approach, blending Eastern European court music with classical opera. My heart tightened in my chest. This was definitely not a coincidence. As Clara continued, she listed details that were identical to my opera. Clara, did you have a chance to listen to the music demo of this opera? Yes, of course. Mr. Roth shared the first drafts a few weeks ago. It's quite impressive. Why do you ask? Just curious. When did Viktor first develop the concept for the opera? Clara paused a bit. I think he started talking about the idea a few months ago, but he's been working very intensively on it for the last 3 weeks. This coincided exactly with the time I had given him my USB drive. I thanked her and hung up, my hands trembling. That evening I told Marco about the situation. Viktor might be stealing my opera, I said, my voice cracking. What? I don't want to believe this, said Marco, shocked. Are you sure? Maybe he just thought of a similar theme? Every detail Clara described is the same as my opera, even the names of some scenes. Marco put his face in his hands. What are we going to do? Viktor is one of Vienna's most powerful figures. I don't know, I said. But I can't leave it like this. The next day, I gathered the courage to call Viktor directly. He answered on the 3rd ring. Viktor Roth. Hello, this is Julian Harwood. I'd like to talk about my opera. There was a brief silence. Ah, yes, the young British composer. I believe I shared my thoughts. Yes, you did. But now I've heard about your opera, The Emperor's Alchemist, and I'm quite surprised by the similarity of themes. Similarity? He interrupted, his voice suddenly cold. Young man, you're not the first composer to use Prague's imperial court as a theme. This is just a coincidence. But the alchemist character, the fusion of Eastern and Western music, these are the main elements of my opera. Look, Julian, he said now with a clear warning tone in his voice. In the art world, similar ideas can emerge simultaneously. You had a rough draft, while mine is a fully professional opera. It wasn't a rough draft, I said, my voice rising. It was 2 years of my work. That may be, he said. But I have my name, my reputation. No one will believe the claims of a new composer. If you continue making these accusations, I should warn you it could be very harmful to your career. He hung up on me. In the following days, I began having nightmares. All my effort, years of work on this piece had been stolen, and I felt helpless. While Marco encouraged me to do whatever I could, I called my professor from the conservatory, Alfred. Alfred was one of Vienna's most respected music critics. "Do you have proof?" he asked after listening to the situation. "I have my original handwritten scores, with dates, and the creation dates of files on my computer." "That might be enough. But making accusations against Viktor, this is a big risk, Julian. You could make serious enemies." I evaluated the situation for a few more days. Finally, I prepared a file containing my original handwritten scores, computer files, and demo recordings of my opera, along with the date of the phone call when Viktor told me my opera was worthless. I decided to send this file to the Vienna Arts and Culture Ministry, as well as to the management of the Vienna State Opera, where the opera was to be staged. 2 days after sending the file, I received a threatening phone call from Viktor. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, fuming with anger. "Starting a slander and defamation campaign?" "I'm just defending the truth," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You'll never be able to prove it, Julian. It's your word against mine. And believe me, in this world, my word carries far more weight than yours." "I have my original handwritten scores," I said, "and my computer files, all dated. These can easily be faked," he laughed. "Besides, you could interpret it as stealing the opera. My students always draw inspiration from me." "This isn't inspiration, it's direct theft," I said. "Be careful, young man. I gave you a chance. Now you're ruining everything." After hanging up, I was filled with a mixture of fear and anger. I told Marco about the situation. "We should go see him," he said determinedly. "Let's talk face to face." The next day, Marco and I went to Viktor's office. His assistant Clara seemed surprised to see us. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," said Marco, "but we need to speak with Viktor immediately." Clara hesitated, then went to Viktor's office. A few minutes later, she returned. "He'll see you." Viktor was sitting behind his desk, music sheets spread out before him. My heart tightened when I saw some of the notes. I recognized them. "Julian, what do you want now?" He greeted us with a cold voice. "I want to speak frankly," I said. "You took my opera and claimed it as your own. Admit it." Viktor laughed. "Stop these ridiculous accusations. I'm asking you to leave now, or I'll have to call security." "Read this first," said Marco, pulling a paper from his pocket. "I spoke with a friend from the Vienna Arts Lawyers Association. This is a court order, an injunction to prevent you from staging your opera." Viktor snatched the paper and read it, his face reddening. "This is nonsense. You won't be able to stop the performance." "My original scores and all evidence have been submitted to the court," I said calmly. "I've also documented all phases of my work process. An expert can definitively tell which scores are original." Viktor stood up from his desk, trembling with anger. "Maybe you can prove the scores, but this won't get you anywhere. Success in the art world isn't just about talent, Julian. Connections and reputation matter too." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You heard me," said Viktor. "You and your friend." His eyes shifted to Marco with a clear tone of disdain in his voice. "Do you really think you'll be accepted in Vienna's music circles? People here respect traditional values. Perhaps your lifestyle could be a problem." At that moment, I realized I was facing another battle. Viktor was not only stealing my opera, but was also threatening me using my sexual orientation. Marco took a step forward. "Are you blackmailing us?" You know that's illegal. Blackmail? No, I'm just stating facts. Vienna's classical music circles are quite conservative. If you think you're threatening me, you're mistaken, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not ashamed of my lifestyle, and no one can use it against me. Viktor shrugged. We'll see. A few phone calls, a few rumors might be enough. Your career could end before it even begins. When we left the office, I was both angry and frightened. Marco held my hand tightly. He's just bluffing, he said. He's scared. However, in the following days, we realized Viktor wasn't bluffing. In Vienna's music circles, rumors about me began to spread. The young British composer is jealous of Viktor Roth's fame. Someone with questionable moral values, making accusations against Viktor because of his homosexual relationship. Such rumors were circulating. Some of my professors at the conservatory began avoiding eye contact with me. After a recital I attended, an elderly Austrian violin virtuoso approached me and said, "You should drop the claims against Viktor. If you want to be permanently accepted here, some things should be overlooked." Throughout this process, Marco was an unwavering supporter. "We have more people supporting us than Viktor thinks," he reassured me. "And remember, you have the evidence." As the court date approached, my tension increased. Viktor's threats had worked. Many doors in the music circles had closed to me. But I wasn't going to give up. This was a struggle not just for my work, but for who I was. On the day of the court hearing, Viktor appeared calm. He was accompanied by a famous intellectual property lawyer and several important professors from the conservatory. I sat with Marco, Alfred, and a few close friends. The judge first listened to Viktor's lawyer. "Your Honor, my client has been working on this opera for a long time. Julian Harwood's claims are completely baseless and aimed at damaging his career." When it was my lawyer's turn, he placed a thick file on the table. "Your Honor, my client's original handwritten scores, records documenting the entire work process, and dated computer files are here. We have also submitted an expert report showing the striking similarities between my client's opera and the work Viktor Roth claims to be his." The court decided to hear expert witnesses in music. My original handwritten scores were sent to a laboratory for ink analysis and paper dating. After a 2-week interim decision, the results came in. My handwritten scores were indeed written at the dates I claimed, and they contained almost identical melodies to Viktor's opera. For the first time, real concern appeared on Viktor's face. He whispered with his lawyer, then turned to the judge. "Your Honor, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. We could consider developing the opera together with Mr. Harwood." The judge gave Viktor a stern look. "It's too late for settlement offers at this stage, Mr. Roth. The evidence is quite clear." 2 days later, the court announced its decision. It was determined that the intellectual property rights of The Alchemist's Tears belonged to me, that Viktor Roth had used this work without permission, and that claiming it under the name The Emperor's Alchemist was against the law. Viktor was ordered to cancel the premiere at the Vienna State Opera and pay me compensation. As I left the courtroom, press members surrounded me. A prominent reporter asked, "Is it true that Viktor Roth ran a personal smear campaign against you?" I took a deep breath. Yes, Mr. Roth not only stole my work, but also tried to exclude me from music circles by using my sexual orientation. However, art is about what you create, not who you are. This statement appeared in the headlines of all Vienna's newspapers the next day. Unexpectedly, I received great support from the arts community. Many musicians and composers admitted they had been subjected to similar behavior from Viktor, but had not dared to speak up until now. The Vienna State Opera decided to open the season with my The Alchemist's Tears. A week before rehearsals began, I received an unexpected phone call from Viktor's office. "Mr. Harwood, I have a request," he said, his voice unusually soft. "Could we meet in person?" I hesitated, but my curiosity won out. In the afternoon, we met at a neutral venue, a cafe. Viktor looked worn out, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated posture. "I want to thank you," he said, surprising me. "Thank me? For what?" "For exposing me," he said with tired eyes. "You know, throughout my career, I've drawn inspiration from others' works. No one dared to confront me until you came along." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you steal others' works instead of creating your own?" "Because I was never good enough," he confessed. "My first success came from slightly altering my teacher's composition. Then it became like an addiction. Success, applause, fame, all were addictive, but none were real." I sat silently, trying to process this confession. "And," he continued, "I targeted you specifically because you could openly be yourself. I never could." It took me a while to understand what these words meant. Viktor was implying his own struggle with his sexual identity. "I understand," I said finally, "but that doesn't justify what you did." "No, it doesn't," he said, nodding. "And I'll pay the price for it. My career is over. But yours is just beginning, and you deserve it." As we left the cafe, Viktor handed me an envelope. "I want you to have this, as an apology." When I opened the envelope, it contained a letter and a check. The check was for 3 times the amount of the compensation. In the letter, Viktor formally apologized and acknowledged that all rights to The Alchemist's Tears belonged to me. 3 months later, The Alchemist's Tears premiered at the Vienna State Opera and was a great success. Europe's leading music critics described it as a unique composition that masterfully blends Eastern and Western synthesis. In the front rows were Marco, tears in his eyes, my former professor Alfred, and friends who had supported me. I didn't see Viktor that night. Later, I learned that he had left Vienna and abandoned his music career. A year later, I heard he was living in a small coastal town in Italy, teaching music there. And according to rumors, he was finally living without hiding his identity. The Alchemist's Tears completely changed my career. I received offers from Berlin, Paris, London, and New York. Marco and I decided to stay in Vienna, but I now frequently go on international tours. As I compose my second opera, I sometimes think about Viktor's conflicted legacy. His behavior filled with theft and threats can never be forgiven. But perhaps thanks to him, a small step was taken toward acceptance not just of works, but of artists' identities in the art world. Sometimes young composers come to me for inspiration. I always tell them the same thing. Don't neglect to document your work, and most importantly, never be ashamed of who you are. Art is about what you create, not who you are. But accepting who you are liberates your creativity. I still keep my original handwritten scores. They're no longer locked in a drawer. They're displayed in glass frames in my study, visible to everyone. They remind me not just of being a composer, but of finding the courage to be myself. And sometimes, looking at them, I think, perhaps true revenge isn't punishing others, but succeeding despite their obstacles. Now, when I start each new composition, I remember my father's words. In the art world, always protect your original work by documenting it. But I've added to his advice, and always protect who you are. Because true art comes from your true self.